Talmud Bavli, Tractate Beitzah, page 18, top of the page, with the words Shema Yitlenu Biado. Lest one come to pick up the vessel in his hand and carry it 4 cubits in the public domain to a ritual bath. Well, this is explaining why the rabbis made an ordinance that one may not purify vessels on Shabbat, because they might carry it. Abaye said to Rabbah, if one has a pit full of water of a ritual bath in his courtyard, so that this decree should not apply, what is there to say? Rabbah said to him, the sages issued a decree against immersing vessels, even in a pit of water in one's own courtyard, due to a pit situated in the public domain. So basically what he said was, if you start dipping in your own private backyard if you start dipping the vessels in your own Rishus Yachid, then you might blur the distinction between that and public. So, okay, Hatinach Shabbos b'Yom Tov Mai Yiklavemar Gazu Yom Tov Atu Shabbos. So basically, they're just saying you can't do a bunch of stuff because it's all associated with each other. Abai posted another challenge. This works out well to Shabbat. With regard to festival, there's no prohibition against carrying from one domain to another. What's there to say? Rabbah said the sages issued a decree that prohibited a festival due to prohibition against Shabbat. Basically, if you carry it on the festival, maybe you'll carry it on Shabbat. Okay, the Gemara asks, and do we issue a decree in such a case? But didn't we learn in the Mishnah, and Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel both agree that one may bring ritually impure water into contact with ritually pure water in stone vessels in order to purify the water. However, one may not immerse the impure water in a ritually impure vessel in order to purify the vessel at the same time. And if it is so that such a decree was issued, let us also decree here that bringing ritually impure water into contact with ritually pure water is prohibited due to the prohibition against immersing a ritually impure vessel in a ritual bath. The Gemara rejects this challenge. And how can you understand that there is substance to this question? Vahistabra. If he has other good, ritually pure water to drink, why do I need to bring this ritually impure water into contact with the ritually pure water? I isle mayim yafim, hainu lamali, lemeba lehu ashaka. Rather, one must say that he does not have suitable drinking water. And since he does not have other water, he is particularly careful about this water so that it not become impure. Therefore, perforce, this must be an exceptional case, as the water became impure despite the precautions that were taken, and the sages did not apply their decrees to unusual cases. Abai raised an objection from the following Beitzah. One may draw water from a spring or a ritual bath on a festival with a ritually impure pail, and the pail becomes ritually pure because while being filled with water, the bucket is completely immersed in the ritual bath. And if it is so that the sages issued such a decree, let us also decree here that it is prohibited to draw water on a festival with a ritually impure pail, lest one come to immerse the pail by itself. Rabbah answered, it is different there, since it is permitted for him to immerse the pail only by drawing water with it. He remembers that it is prohibited to immerse a vessel by itself, and therefore there is no reason to issue a decree. Abai raised an objection from a different Beitzah, in which it was taught with regard to a vessel that was rendered ritually impure on the eve of a festival. One may not immerse it on the festival. However, if it became impure on the festival itself, one may immerse it on the festival. And if it is so that the sages issue such a decree, let us also decree here that it is prohibited to immerse a vessel that became impure on a festival due to the prohibition against immersing a vessel that became impure on the eve of a festival. Rabbah answered, contracting ritual impurity on a festival when all are ritually pure is an uncommon occurrence. And the general principle is that in the case of an uncommon occurrence, the sages did not issue a decree as a preventive measure. Abai raised yet another objection from the following Beitzah with regard to a vessel that was rendered ritually impure by a primary source of impurity. One may not immerse it on a festival. However, if it was rendered impure only by a derivative source of impurity, meaning that the vessel came into contact with an object that was rendered impure by a primary source of impurity, so that the object has the status of first-degree ritual impurity and confers upon the vessel the status of second-degree ritual impurity, a type of impurity that applies to vessels only by rabbinic decree. In such a case, one may immerse the vessel on a festival. And if it is so that the sages issue such a decree, let us also decree here that it is prohibited to immerse this. A vessel rendered impure by a derivative source of impurity due to the prohibition to immerse that. A vessel rendered impure by a primary source of impurity. Okay. Wow. Rabbah replied, where do you find a case where people are particular about purifying a vessel that contracted ritual impurity from a derivative source of impurity? It is only in one situation, namely, with regard to priests, since they eat truma, and truma contracts ritual impurity even from a vessel that came into contact with only a derivative source of impurity. An ordinary person who eats non-consecrated produce does not go to the trouble of purifying such a vessel, since regular produce contracts ritual impurity only from a vessel that came into contact with a primary source of impurity, but not from a vessel that came into contact with a derivative source of impurity. And as for priests, the general principle is that priests are vigilant. They are careful not to allow their vessels to become impure. Therefore, impurity in the case of priests is considered a rare occurrence with regard to which the sages did not issue a decree. The Gemara further suggests, coming here, a different proof, as Rav Chia bar Ashi said, that Rav said, a menstruating woman who has no ritually pure clothes to wear after she immerses herself in a ritual bath to purify herself, as all of her clothes had become impure, and Shabbat, and it is Shabbat or festival, when she is unable to immerse them, may employ an artifice to circumvent the prohibition and immerse herself in her clothes. She is permitted to purify herself, and when she immerses herself while wearing her garments, they become purified at the same time. And if it is so, that the sages issued such a decree, let us also decree that it is prohibited for the woman to immerse herself in her clothes, lest she come to immerse the clothes by themselves. The Gemara answers, it is different there, since it is permitted for her to immerse the clothes only by wearing them as garments. She remembers that it is prohibited to immerse them by themselves, and will not come to violate this prohibition. Apropos Rabbah's view that one may not immerse a vessel on Shabbat, lest he come to carry it 4 cubits in the public domain, Rav Yosef said that it is prohibited to immerse a vessel on Shabbat for a different reason. It is a decree issued by the sages as a preventive measure due to the prohibition against wringing. After immersing certain items such as clothes, one might come to wring them, and this is prohibited on Shabbat and festivals as a subcategory of the biblically prohibited labor of threshing. Abaye said to Rav Yosef, this works out well with regard to vessels that are fit for wringing, such as clothes. But with regard to vessels that are not fit for wringing, what is there to say? Rav Yosef said to him, the sages issued a decree against these vessels, which cannot be wrung, due to those vessels which can be wrung. Abaye raised against Rav Yosef all of these objections that he had raised against Rabbah in an attempt to prove that the sages did not issue such a decree, and Rav Yosef answered him as we answered in the name of Rabbah. Rav Bivi said a different reason. The prohibition against immersing a vessel on a festival is a decree issued by the sages, lest one come to delay the immersion of his impure vessels. Were the sages to permit him to immerse vessels on a festival, he might delay immersing all of his impure vessels until the festival, when he has more free time. And were he to leave virtually impure vessels in his possession for a lengthy period, he might come to defile items that must be kept ritually pure, such as truma. The Gemara comments, it is taught in a Beitzah in accordance with the opinion of Rav Bivi with regard to a vessel that became ritually impure on the eve of a festival. One may not immerse it on a festival due to a decree, lest he come to delay and keep impure vessels in his home in order to immerse them on a festival. Rava said a different reason. It is prohibited to immerse a vessel on Shabbat because it looks as if he is repairing the vessel, since the vessel was previously unfit for use, and the act of immersion renders it usable. This is similar to the repair of a vessel, which Torah law prescribes on Shabbat and festivals. The Gemara challenges this understanding. If so, a person should likewise be prohibited to immerse himself, because it looks like he is repairing himself through purification. The Gemara answers, a person undergoing immersion looks as if he is cooling himself. Since it is not clearly evident that he is immersing himself or to purify himself, as he might be bathing for his pleasure, there is no reason to prohibit the immersion. The Gemara challenges this explanation. This works out well in a case where he immersed himself in good, clean water, in which it would be a pleasure to bathe. But if he immerses himself in bad, murky water, as the water of a ritual bath is not always sufficiently clean, what is there to say? If Nachmar Yitzchak said, even in that case, his actions do not prove that his intention is to purify himself. As sometimes a person comes home on a hot day and washes himself even in putrid water in which flax was soaked because the heat has made him so uncomfortable. Alright?